My name's Ethan Tufts. You may know me from the YouTube channel Hello Road, where I drive unique cars, memorable cars to interesting locations. It's sort of a mashup between a car show and a travel show. And you may not know me because I'm kind of new to all this. I'm new to the automotive world. You know, I'm sort of a case study, a living case study to see if I can insert myself into a new industry after a long career in a completely different world. So that's kind of me in a nutshell.
What's the term? Vlog?
Yeah, you can call it that. I mean, I we can get into the channel in a little bit more detail, but in general, yeah, I do a show. It's basically me in a camera and some gear and some cars and traveling to cool places. So that's on YouTube.
I'll tell you where I found you.
Okay, I'd like to know.
In the parking garage of the Peterson Automotive Museum.
I
didn't find you.
Yes, you found my vehicle, I'm guessing.
That car, it's impossible to ignore. If it's there, you will be paying attention to it. It will force you to pay attention to it.
Sure. Yes.
So maybe before we get started on the origin story, can we talk about that car for a little bit?
Yes, we certainly can. So I believe the car in question that you're referring to is Liam Neeson.
That is absolutely the car.
Okay, so if you're familiar with the actor Liam Neeson, then you'd understand how this pun came about. It's sort of a joke that we took way too far.
Yeah.
So basically, it's a 1997 Nissan 200SX that we plastered with pictures of Liam Neeson on the all corners of the car, and it's just paper with packing tape just taped to the car. And this is a car that we use for the 24 Hours of Lemons racing series. So it's just we came up with the idea one day and figured, okay, this is and the car's been more popular than anything I've ever done pretty much in my life.
Yeah.
It's one of those things that it's hard to ignore, and it's just one of those puns it's kind of hard not to laugh at. So we're pretty proud of it.
Yeah, well, you should be. I think that was the most photographed car of Radwood in LA.
It's very possible, which, I guess it maybe doesn't quite fit the rad aesthetic in terms of like what the epitome of 80s and 90s cars, but certainly it's photogenic. And there's a few pictures on there that are, you kind of wonder why Liam let them get out into the world.
Yeah.
There's some pictures of him just, pretty much naked with his hands over his nether regions, and wearing, in the middle of a rock quarry or something like that. It's interesting how, he and apparently his publicist let that slide, but it did happen. And we took full advantage of that to plaster that right on the back of the car, mainly to distract other drivers. And we've, on the racetrack, and it's definitely come up a few times where other drivers have come up to us and said, "Hey, you know what? I was trying to pass you and I couldn't because I was laughing too hard."
That's one hell of a statement, especially with Lemons, because there's so many ridiculous cars in Lemons, and it's very understated unless you really pay attention to it. It's not like It's got some crazy wings or like a shuttle on top of it like I've seen.
Yeah, no, it's nothing like that. I mean, there's a lot of really elaborate and extravagant themes that go into Lemons, and that's one of the reasons why that racing series is so cool. But we want, once we came up with this idea, it's like, okay, this is going to be probably the lowest effort theme other than doing nothing. We just, if it rains, a few of the pictures fall off. We just tape some new ones on. And we always make sure to bring extra pictures and extra packing tape to the racetrack with us. That's kind of the number one thing we need to remember.
So tell me the origin story about the car. Why'd you pick the Nissan? And how did you guys come up with Liam Neeson?
The team that we put together, we didn't really want to try to go into Lemons to win. That didn't seem like a lot of fun to us. Most of the people on the team didn't have any racing experience. I was the only one that had racing experience. So we really just wanted to be able to get on the track and have fun and be competitive, but it wasn't about like really trying to get out there and beat everybody. It was, so in that sense, we picked a car that we thought would be pretty fun to drive and pretty reliable, something that wouldn't cause us too much grief and too much agony. And that's maybe looked down upon by the Lemons judges. The Lemons judges actually want you to buy the worst possible car, something that has absolutely no business on the racetrack. And I there's plenty of people that do that, and I feel like we wanted to go with something that actually honestly was a little bit easier, and that we could out of the box have fun and not just worry about this thing careening off the edge of the track like a Buick Electra or something from the 70s.
Right. Something that's a bajillion pounds.
Yeah, exactly. So, and that's, it's not a great handling car. It understeers everywhere, but that's actually the other thing that's kind of good about the car is that we, with all new drivers on our team, we don't ever really get into much trouble. We're not we're not constantly spinning out and causing problems. It's a pretty easy car to drive.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's sort of why we chose that vehicle, and the parts are readily available. It's got the SR20 motor in it, which is a great motor.
Wow. Okay.
Pretty reliable. Well, I guess until we blew it up, but that's another story.
Well,
yeah. And really the name just, I think part of it was we had one theme that was, what was the name of the theme? It was basically a Harbor Freight theme. And that it just wasn't that cool, wasn't that interesting. So we spent some time really trying to come up with something that we all could get a laugh out of. So that's where the Liam Nissan came about. So yeah,
I think you've succeeded.
Yeah,
I think you've definitely succeeded.
I guess there is a little bit of a problem because he may have done some things since we've put this theme together that. I guess, is Liam Neeson a racist now? I mean, there was some things that happened in the news that I was like, oh crap, are we going to have to change our theme? So I admittedly don't really follow him at all or, what he does in his life. So I probably should figure out if we need to change our theme. It's possible, but we don't want to be representing somebody that is unsavory, but I'll have to look into that.
Are you really representing him?
I'm not sure. I guess technically not. I'm sure he could come and tell us that have a cease and desist. I would love for him to actually find out about our car.
I would think that's great.
Love for that to happen. If anybody out there knows of anybody that he works with, publicists, agents, that kind of thing, I would even if he does send us a cease and desist afterwards, I would just be glad to know that he's aware of our vehicle. And I think the problem is if we do another vehicle. If we ever crash this or something, we're going to have to find another car that we can have some celebrity name associated with it, like Tom Selleck or Tony Stanza, or
you guys have really thought this through.
Yes, Amy Smart Car. I know that one's that's a little bit on the edge. Maybe not as good as all the other ones, but
I mean, Tom Selleck, come on.
Yeah, I know.
That's gold.
George Costanza.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think a lot of people know a Stanza.
Yeah.
You're talking about the Nissan Stanza, right?
I actually have one.
You actually?
We could get into that later if you want.
Please tell me it's called the George Costanza.
Sure. I can usually call it Tony Stanza, but that's
Tony
fine.
Stanza.
Either one works.
Oh, we're definitely going to get into it,
Okay.
but I wanted to talk to you about the car at first because it's kind of a thing now. It's its own thing now.
It is,
especially after Radwood.
Yeah, it's well, actually, this is one of the best things that ever happened to me was when the Top Gear guys, former Top Gear guys, were starting that Drive Tribe thing.
Mm-hmm.
They did a video and they were talking about shitty car mods, and they had this tribe on the Drive Tribe site, which I'm not even sure if it's still around, but shitty car mods. And James May himself was talking about Liam Neeson. He pulled up a picture of Liam Neeson, and after that, I was like, okay, I don't need to do anything else. James May likes my car, so I think I'm done here.
That's nice. Yeah, that's a great story.
Yeah, it was pretty cool, and everybody on the team was super happy about that. So,
how long have you guys been doing it with this car?
We bought the car in 2015, and we took us a while to kind of turn it into a race car.
Mm-hmm.
We had a few mishaps with the roll cage. We bought an off-the-shelf cage that we tried to put in, and that didn't really work out. So we wasted $1,000 there, and we ended up bringing it to another place to actually do the cage correctly, which is I'm asking my brother to race with me and my friends. We want to make sure the cage is done right. So we've had it since about then. We've done maybe 6 or 7 events with Lemons.
Okay.
And I think, I couldn't even tell you where we placed. other than our last race at Buttonwillow Raceway, I think we finished like 89th or something, and we were so happy with that finish.
Yeah.
It was. We were so stoked about that.
How many cars are there?
It depends on the racetrack. I feel like that probably at a place like Buttonwillow, they might allow like 110, 120 cars.
That's insanity.
They're not all on the track at one time because most of them are broken. But
yeah.
but it is insanity, and it is. I used to race Spec Miata before this, which is a whole different animal. But 24 Hours of Lemons is just so much more fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because of the antics and just the fact that we're driving our Sentra based race car, and we're passing, old Camaros, and E30s are passing us, and there's Miatas, and there's Subaru Legacies, and there's old Alfa Romeos. It's just insane. But Lemons is one of those things that I'm going to be doing for a very long time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good. Stay safe.
Yeah.
And
definitely.
keep Liam.
Yes.
Liam very, very safe.
Okay. We will.
We don't want anything to happen to him.
We'll bring extra packing tape next time around. Make sure that none of those pictures fly off.
I want to talk about your actual origin story now, because we've talked about the car's origin story.
Yes.
But the car's not here.
That's more important, though.
Sure. Yeah, but the car's not here to actually, vocalize things.
Sure.
I don't think it can at this point. Maybe one of these days.
Yes.
It'll have a soul of its own. Are you a Southern California native?
I'm not. Actually,
You're not?
I
Okay.
grew up in Western Massachusetts. I moved to California in like 98, 99, right around there. Looking back throughout my life, I've sort of had like two parallel narratives going on. There's been music and there's been cars. If I look back to when I was really young, I sort of had to choose because I wanted to kind of make one my career.
Sure.
So I ultimately went with the music side of things, and the car has sort of always been relegated. The car side of things has always sort of been relegated to be like hobby, sort of second tier. So back when I was younger, I used to record music in my bedroom. I was in bands. I went to school for music composition. I went on some tours. I've released 5 albums. I've done a lot of music related stuff, and my day job is actually currently at a music gear company. We make effects pedals for guitarists and keyboard players and that kind of thing. So that's kind of been my career path for a very long time. But if going back to when I was younger, thinking about that other parallel narrative that was going on, sort of alongside it was the car side of things. If you asked my parents what my favorite toy was as a kid, they would say, "Oh yeah, that dirt pile in the backyard." Because I would just go out there and I had my Matchbox cars, and I would just build these cities. I'd build these roads and towns and with rocks and sticks, and I did that for hours and hours. I don't remember ever like pretty much doing anything else at that, like at 4 or 5 years old. Then I went on to draw cars. I was terrible at it, but I thought that maybe I could turn it into something at some point. But when I was 10 years old, about that time, I guess I sort of realized, looking back, I was actually pretty interested in the marketing side of automobile manufacturers at that time, which maybe seems weird for like a 10, 11-year-old, but I created my own brands, and I drew like specific cars for each brand, and I kind of modeled it after like the Ford, Lincoln, Mercury hierarchy. And I even went to such lengths as to try to figure out like badge engineering certain models that I've sort of imagined, and kind of make the luxury version of that and how it would work, who the customer is, and that it's very odd that I was into that at that age, but that's what I dug. But then since then, after that, it was driving fast on the back roads of Western Massachusetts with my friends, and it kind of was just relegated to a hobby, and it's only recently that I've been trying to take a look at my life and figure out, how can I turn this into something a little bit more, and that's kind of where Hello Road came about.
Whenever people say I'm from the East Coast, my my eyes light up. I'm like, oh, tell me more.
Ah.
It's so exotic. Me being here in Los Angeles almost all of my life.
Okay.
And having the ability to drive the roads that we have around here.
Sure.
It's like, I want to know what kind of other roads there are.
Yeah.
Specifically on the East Coast. I've traveled so many different places, and that's kind of like the Western United States, but I've never actually been able to get into a car and drive around on the eastern side.
Sure.
And I've always kind of thought that there's not really a lot to see and not really a lot to do when you're inside of a car. It's kind of like little towns here and there, which is always fun.
Mm-hmm.
But, you want to kind of mash it somewhere and drive aggressively, or, maybe not aggressively. Aggressively is not the right term now. I don't want anybody to come after me. Spiritedly,
yes.
Right. But responsibly.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about Massachusetts, Western Massachusetts, and the car culture there.
It's been a while since I was a kid back there, but I would say that at least the roads in Western Massachusetts, Southern Vermont, that kind of area where we used to drive around in, the roads are tight. They're old farm roads. They're old roads to get between farms, and there's a lot of. It's not like the roads out here, like Northern California, Central California, where there's vast expanses of area where there's no houses. There's always going to be, there's not very long stretches of road where you're not going to encounter a house or a farm or something like that.
Okay.
So, I would say compared to the roads out here, we weren't driving nearly as fast. But definitely just a different kind of beauty, I think, out there where, that I miss definitely.
You were how old when you moved out here?
I was, I was about 20 when I moved to Los Angeles. Yeah.
So you had a good amount of time to really mess around with cars there, and the people that were, kind of enthusiastic about cars there as well. So what was the car culture like in Western Massachusetts?
Sure. When I was a kid, it was mainly, I didn't have a ton of money. My parents weren't, my dad wasn't into cars, so I didn't get any of that from my parents. My dad was a teacher, my mom was a nurse. They always had like one or two extra cars around, which maybe that rubbed off on me a little bit. Yeah. My dad always said, it's never a bad idea to have an extra car lying around in case one of them breaks down. So that's definitely rubbed off onto me, as I currently own 12 cars, but maybe a little bit too much. But back there, I think part of it was just, none of my friends really had great cars. I think probably my friend with his, I think he had an 86 or 87 Honda CRX SI. Nice. That was like the coolest thing back then.
Still pretty cool today. Yeah. And, I started off with a Ford Econoline, so it wasn't like it was a manual 3 on the tree, brown, rusty van. I had that for a while. I had an old 78 Malibu 4-speed manual, which was fun in a weird way. And then I had an 87 Toyota Tercel, which was gutless and just cool little Econobox, but not fun. And so I went through those cars that didn't really get me what I wanted out of a vehicle. I would drive the hell out of that Econoline. I would race that on back roads as fast as I could possibly go, hopping curbs and doing all sorts of dumb stuff that a kid does in a vehicle. Sure.
But I had a Ford Econoline, full-size van. But there was one day when I drove by this shady dealer that had a 87 Volkswagen Scirocco 16 valve for sale. It was red. It's beautiful. And, I think, so I guess when you're talking about like car culture, most of my youth was like just wishing I had a cool car.
Yeah.
And I think I went many years just driving these kind of, cars that weren't meant to be driven fast, trying to drive those fast. And then I saw this Scirocco, and when I saw that, I was like, I'm definitely going to buy this no matter what I have to do. So I had my pizza delivery job. I just saved up and eventually I bought this Volkswagen Scirocco. And to make a long story short, this was probably the worst decision I ever made in my entire life in terms of automobiles. The first day that I had the car, probably within less than a day, maybe 12 hours of owning this vehicle, the timing belt snapped and it bent valves in the engine.
Oh, that's wonderful.
So that was cool. So I went a very long time saving up for this thing. And then the day that I had it, it was no longer operable. And I was actually delivering pizza at the time. So I was just stuck in the parking lot with pizzas in my car and all right,
man, that sucks. That's awful.
Yeah. But eventually, I don't know how much you want to get into that story because that car was the most unreliable vehicle I've ever had. And I've owned 36 cars.
Wow.
So that is like, it's not even just at the top, it's like miles above the top. It's like, if you could look at a pile of cars that were bad to me, this one is at the very, very, very top.
Okay.
Yeah. And I kind of want to buy another one.
Okay.
Cause I'm sort of a masochist.
Yeah. I was going to say,
Yeah.
but you said it first.
Yeah.
All right. So, I mean, what about it was unreliable? I mean, obviously the timing, but it sounded like it just needed a new timing belt and maybe someone wasn't responsible or something.
Yeah. I mean, part of it was sort of a combination of, I bought it from a shady dealer. I was just a dumb kid. I was like, I wanted this car. I didn't really care where I bought it from.
Right.
Part of it was, so it probably had a ton of deferred maintenance. It only had 98,000 miles on it. And I sort of felt like, that's not too much, but back in the 90s, that was kind of high.
Yeah.
For a German sports car. And I guess I do have to give the car some credit because I did drive it across the country and it did make it barely with some breakdowns along the way. I got stuck in Albuquerque because the distributor failed and the fuel pump failed at the same time.
Okay.
Both window regulators stopped working. So the power windows would always get stuck. Sunroof leak, filled the car with water. I had all sorts of ignition problems. What else? I mean, this is just like tip of the iceberg stuff. I'm trying to remember like the big stuff.
The big stuff. Okay.
Yeah. Oh, I think I mentioned this on my podcast too, just because I have to tell this story every single time this car comes up. But when I was driving it back across the country, I had this system rigged up. So when I would finally get on the freeway, get it up to speed and get it into fifth gear, I had this rope that I tied from the shift lever to the glove box. So that way it wouldn't pop out of fifth. So this was my way of like holding it into fifth gear.
All right.
Yep. It's one of those things where I'm sure if I had a few $1,000s at my disposal, I could have fixed all these little problems, but I just didn't have the money. And so, looking back, I can't blame it all on the car. I can blame a lot of it on me. I just didn't have the money to fix it.
Sure.
So I've ultimately, I got to about Kansas and then it started popping out of fifth and I wouldn't stay in fifth. And then it started popping out of fourth and I couldn't get it to stay in fourth. And all the while the axles were starting to go and the transmission mounts were going. So as I was making it cross the country from California up to Massachusetts, more and more things were starting to fall apart, but it did make it.
Okay.
It did make it.
California, Massachusetts, or Massachusetts to California?
Well, I did both. I did Massachusetts to California and then California back to Massachusetts.
In the same car?
In the same car.
Well, yeah.
So that's what looking back, I do have to give it a little more credit. I think a lot of it is more of just the heartbreak that the car gave me and that kind of thing. And I did ultimately take the guy that sold it to me to small claims court.
No kidding.
And I won, but I was never able to collect the money.
Of course.
Yeah. He skipped town and who knows where he's at now. Yep.
Selling Scirocco's in a small town somewhere in middle America.
Yeah. You know what? I should probably find him and then see if I can buy another car from him. That's as much of a masochist as I won't do that.
Let's talk about 13 cars and let's talk about 36 cars, right?
Sure.
Okay. I've had a lot of people on the show, and I've had a lot of flippers as well, like Vinny from the Hoonigans. He's had probably 30 plus cars, but he just can't hold on to cars because he buys one, drives it, and then he's tired of it, and it's gone.
Sure.
But he doesn't have 12 or 13 at the same time. Right.
Yeah. Well, it sort of goes back to where Hello Road started. This definitely directly ties into the car problem that I have. So,
okay.
I would say a year ago, I would one of my nightly rituals was to break out the laptop, be like 11, 12 at night, and just start surfing Craigslist. And I would have, had to have like 50 tabs open of cars that I thought were pretty interesting or cool or memorable or that kind of thing. And I, you know, it starts to like slowly hunch over and like fall asleep, like with a, you know, a Chevy Chevette on the screen, and I would be like drooling on the keyboard and that kind of thing. And then I think, so I did that for way too long. And there was one night that my wife asked me, what are you doing? Like, why do you do this every night? Do you really want to buy all these vehicles? And part of me was like, yeah, of course I do. But then I, you know, thought about it a little bit and like, actually, no, I don't really want the vehicles. I kind of am more interested in what each car represents and the story behind the cars, and why people would buy this particular model and that kind of thing. And, you know, that's sort of what I was interested in. You know, maybe one car reminded me, and I guess a lot of it has to do with nostalgia. One car might have reminded me of the vehicle, my first car, or maybe the car that my mom had when I was growing up, or a car that me and a friend like drove to the beach when we were 16. So there were like a lot of memories that were associated with a lot of these searches. And you know, I sort of realized that, yeah, I don't really want the vehicles. In theory, we'll get to the fact that maybe hasn't panned out exactly.
Right.
You know, I'm kind of just interested in the stories behind it. So, you know, in me being in marketing, I sort of think about like, why do people buy things? You know, for instance, you might say, I want to buy a book. So, why do you want to buy this book? Is because you want the content. But for a lot of people, it's you're buying the idea that you're going to have time to go sit on the beach and read this thing. You're buying this idea that you're going to have time to do something. You know, why does anybody buy a Porsche Cayman? You know, maybe you buy into the idea of you know, the Porsche engineering and the history and that kind of thing. But you might also be buying into the idea that, oh, I'm going to take the back road home from work every single day. You know, you may or may not do that, but you're not just buying the actual machine. You're buying this idea.
Right.
So, and I think that's kind of what I was thinking about when looking at these vehicles. And what I really thought would be what I really wanted to do was try to turn this kind of unhealthy obsession into something that would allow me to meet new people and travel to new places and explore and discover new things. And this is all sort of coming at a time where I've been doing the same thing for like 15, 20 years. So it was also maybe kind of like a midlife crisis sort of thing.
Yeah.
But it was kind of like, okay, can I turn this idea of the nostalgia for these cars, these weird and forgotten cars, into something that makes me get off my butt and explore. So that's kind of where Hello Road came from, was, okay, if I create this YouTube channel and I force myself to create a video every 2 weeks, you know, people, you know, if I start to get people starting to watch it, that'll keep me honest and make me continue to go out and research new places and learn about new cars and meet new people and really just try to insert myself into this industry that I have no reason to be in.
Right.
You know? And I guess tying that into the cars that I have now, you know, having 13 cars, I think I did buy a lot of the vehicles for content for the channel. And kind of silly me, I didn't realize how much harder it is to sell a car than it is to buy a car. It's really easy to buy a car if you have the money, but it's selling one. I think part of the problem is when somebody's selling a car, they're often selling a problem.
Sure.
You know, if they had a used car, they're getting rid of it because something's wrong with it. So that's what I'm quickly realizing, that, okay, well, I might have bought a 87 Chrysler Fifth Avenue as a joke for the show, or an 86 Stanza wagon kind of as a joke. It's a lot harder. There's not as many people buying cars as for jokes, you know?
Yeah.
And the market for some of those cars that I have is very, very small. You know, there might be 4 or 5 people in the country or even the world that want to buy a gold 87 Chrysler Fifth Avenue. So,
right. Yeah. It's a very particular car.
Sure.
For probably a very particular person.
Yes. Yeah. So that sort of ties into, you know, what I'm trying to do with the channel, but also sort of an effect of it that I wasn't really intending, which I will definitely say this: it is not healthy to own more than a few cars, and it's actually very terrible. It's not good. There's nothing I like about it. I mean, I guess the one thing I do like about it is okay, I want to drive a comfy car, a comfy Malaise era cruiser with Corinthian leather. I can just hop out and drive that. If I want to drive my 88 Chevy Nova twin cam, which is just a random weird car that nobody remembers and it's fun to drive, I can drive that. Or if I need something reliable, I drive my Scion. So it is kind of nice to be able to like have those at your disposal. Luckily, I have the space for them, but also they're all broken and they're all terrible. So there's always something going wrong with them, and it's definitely you've caught me right at the point where I know that I need to get rid of like most of these vehicles.
Yeah, it's, I was going to say, with all due respect, Ethan, all of those cars that you've mentioned, not good cars. They never were good cars, not even when they were new. In the little cheat sheet that you sent me, you wrote this sentence which caught my eye, and you said that you basically created Hello Road to force yourself to take these road trips.
Yes.
Okay, so tell me a little bit more about the beginning of Hello Road. I think this is a great time for us to transition into this awesome thing that you're doing. So tell me where it all started.
For a very long time, I was, working this job. We talked about it a little bit. Where I felt like I'm not learning anything new. I'm kind of doing the same thing, and it all started with, I figured I've never really been on camera. I've never really done anything where I'm kind of the host. I mean, I've done some stuff in my job where I'm like demoing gear and that kind of thing, but not where I'm like talking at the camera. So this was a big thing for me to kind of undertake and really figure out how to do. And that was one of the reasons why I wanted to do it, because I'm like, I don't know how to be in front of a camera. I guess I got to learn this. So it started out with, I bought this one car specifically for the show. I bought a 1974 Datsun B210, and it was brown. And it was one of those cars that I remember seeing out of the back window of my parents' van on road trips, just like driving by, and it always just caught my eye. It's just this weird kind of like, almost looks like a kind of a weird Alpha in a way, with the hatchback version, with like that fast, not fast, but that kind of the hatch looking thing on the back, and the hubcaps just always looked like somebody from the factory. They were just beat with a hammer. I don't know if you remember those Datsun hubcaps from the 70s. I don't remember what they're called, but they just look like, all right, they're coming down the line. Let's hit them with a hammer a bunch of times, and that's it. So it really just was, it definitely kind of, not really by any definition a good vehicle, other than it was just, if it didn't rust to crap, they'll just drive forever. But most of them rusted to pieces, and I think that's why you don't see very many of them anymore. But they just keep going, and it's very super simple automobiles, and I just always liked the styling, and I wanted to experience it. And this was just I figured, okay, well, I'm gonna buy this car. I'm going to try to pair an adventure that I can take this car on. And I drove it up to Vasquez Rocks, which is in Agua Dulce, California, which is this amazing rock formation where they filmed all sorts of movies and TV shows and commercials and that kind of thing. There's a pretty well-known Star Trek episode that was filmed there. So yeah, a lot of my videos are taking a car and then talking about the history of the car and why it's interesting and the stories you have behind the car, but then also driving it to taking on a little road trip or a long road trip, and then having, a third of the video be about the destination that you're at. So if you watch any of my videos, most of my videos will be talk about the car quite a bit and then go to this interesting destination, then learn about the destination, then drive home. And that first video was, I wouldn't say, my channel's not a large channel, and it's doing okay and it's growing. But that was one of those videos where I posted it and there was a lot of really good reaction right away. And I thought, okay, this seems like I feel like my contribution to the automotive world can be, is something that's a little bit, less about specs and a little bit more about what kind of adventures, what kind of experiences can we get out of our vehicles?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the same concept as like the roadkill guys, where they find something and literally resurrect it and try to drive it across the country. But they have a whole team to do that. And my question, as you were telling me this and just talking about the cars that you own and your adventure in your Scirocco.
Yes.
Did that car teach you to become somewhat savvy in order to prevent yourself from getting stuck?
Oh no. You'd think that would be the case.
All right.
No, I'm not a great mechanic. I can do the basics. I think I learned a lot just from running our 24 Hours of Lemons team. But nothing that can. I don't have the kind of car, the kind of mechanical savvy that will get me out of a terrible situation.
Okay.
It's just not going to happen.
All right. So what happens in a situation, like hopefully you haven't had too many of those, but something's bound to happen where you're stuck on the side of the road, and especially the locations that you're going to.
Sure.
They're pretty remote.
Yeah.
Or they can be.
Sure. I think the riskiest one that I've done, so there's this 3-episode series that I did where I flew to Utah and I bought a completely beat up 1991 Geo Prism GSI, which is very similar to the Nova Twin Cam in the sense that it's a car that came out of the NUMMI plant. It's got the 4A GE motor in it. This one is a hatchback version, so it's one of 237 hatchbacks, GSI hatchbacks made that year, which nobody cares about because they didn't sell many of these. I'm one of 4 people that cares about this car.
Right.
So I flew out to Salt Lake, bought it from this guy that sort of a friend of a friend of a friend of a friend of a friend. So there was some connection, but I didn't know this guy. A super cool guy. He bought the car, drove around, and was like, yeah, it's fine. I know. I looked at the brakes, I looked at the fluids, and that's about all I did. And I proceeded to then try to drive it back to Los Angeles. So 800 miles in this $1,000 beat up car. So that it's funny because I had the car for about an hour, and I figured, I need to make a quick pit stop at Walmart and get some Cliff Bars and some stuff like that. So I get some, maybe
provisions. Yeah, I get it.
Maybe a warm hat in case I get stuck in the middle of Utah in February.
Okay. Smart.
Yeah. So I did a few things that would help me in a situation that if I got stranded, but probably not enough.
Okay.
And not enough things, but I was thinking about it a little bit. So I go to Walmart, buy all my stuff, I come back out and the car won't start. So I'm like, okay, I've had this car an hour and it won't start. And I actually used to own a 91 Geo Prism GSI back when I was 19.
Okay.
And I remember this happening with that car where I don't know if it's really kind of been determined why it does this, but I think the starter is in a weird place where the heat soaks or something, and it just doesn't start. So if you just let it sit for like a couple hours, it'll start again.
Oh, convenient.
So, yeah. So I let it sit in the Walmart parking lot. I was trying to figure out if I was going to get the previous owner to help me out, but it turns out I didn't need his help. After a couple hours, it just magically decided to start. It was fine.
Okay.
And then I drove it down to Parowan Gap, which is this area in Parowan, Utah, that has all these petroglyphs on the side of the mountain. And it's very cold, starting to hail a little bit while I was there. But it was so beautiful and just so peaceful. And that was the reason. That was one of the times I'm like, okay, this is kind of what I want this channel to be. Sort of a way for me to take these adventures, maybe a little bit of element of risk, that kind of gives it a little bit more edge to it. But I was there for 4 hours filming this episode, and I was the only person there the whole time.
Wow.
I will say this: I did leave the car running because there was
for 4 hours.
Yes.
Okay.
There was no cell service, so I left the car running because I wasn't sure that I would be able to get it started again, and there was nobody else out there. So.
Yeah, that's very, very smart.
Yeah.
Because especially in places like that, during the night, it's so incredibly cold.
Very cold.
And being in a car is not going to help you very much.
No.
It might actually be worse. Yeah, so wow. Okay, 4 hours and not a hiccup.
No, it was fine. And that was just a wonderful place to go and just experience the peacefulness of a wide open space. I guess, except for my car running in the background,
Right.
Then I took it to this place called the Delta Solar Labs. it's kind of a weird place in Delta, Utah, where this company or this guy, somebody created these huge towers that you can see from the road. So you pull up to these huge towers, and it looks like these incredible like alien spaceships that are dangling from these tall poles. And apparently they've got Fresnel lenses on the top, and all of these lenses are pointed to this little bucket of combustible material, and apparently that's supposed to generate energy. But you look at this thing, and they're all broken and tattered, and there's this like broken plastic all over the ground, and they're just like these big behemoth things that are just tilting in the sky and creaking and tilting and
creepy.
Very, very creepy because it's very windy and very desolate out there. There's no other people. So I just wanted to go out there and talk about these, just kind of see what this is all about. And what ended up happening is this guy pulled up in this old Chevy Blazer, and he rolled down the window, and he started talking, and he had one tooth. And I was like, oh crap, this guy's going to pull out a gun and tell me to get the hell off this property. I mean, it wasn't even on the property. It was just near it.
Right.
But he was super friendly, and he said, hey, you want to come inside and check this place out? Yeah. The guy that runs it's kind of a weirdo.
Oh, really?
But we're still trying to get energy from this one particular unit. So come on in and just walk around. And I was like, okay. So that I got to walk, and he also said, please steer clear of the ones that are really tilting because they could fall at any minute. And these things are like 100 feet wide, like, or 50 feet wide, 100 feet tall, that kind of thing.
Got it.
So yeah, walked around there for quite a bit. And it turns out after I got home, I found out that this was sort of obviously a scam. Apparently this organization was being investigated by the US government, and they're defrauding investors and that kind of thing. And you look at this setup, and you're like, yeah, why would anybody think this would actually work? Yeah. So that was just one of those things that I would have never experienced had I not done this ridiculous experiment of buying this car in Salt Lake and driving it back to LA.
Okay.
And that's, if I could find more ways to do that kind of thing, that's what I'd love to do.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about actually figuring out where to go.
Sure.
And why you're going there. So tell me about the spots.
Tell me about the spots that I've been to, or
why do you want to go to the places that you go to, basically?
In some ways, I'd say they've got a story that's maybe as odd as the car that I'm taking, or just spots that are like that Delta Solar Labs place. Most people I've talked to have never heard of that place, or most people never will hear of that place. But just areas like that you show up and you get a sense of somebody needs to talk about these places, Yeah. And I guess I'm not really making a lot of sense, but
no, you're getting there.
Yeah.
Somebody does need to talk about these places. And I think the common issue with most road trips is you kind of have these spots, right? Sure. And you go to those spots, and they're kind of touristy, and yeah, they're great. Obviously, they're great for a reason. That's why people go there. It's like Big Sur. Big Sur is amazing.
Sure.
But it's not that amazing in comparison to some places that I've been to that nobody ever knows about, because they just don't want to, because it's, Big Sur is relatively accessible.
Sure.
Depending on, obviously the road conditions. But anyway, I don't want to hijack what you're saying.
I think that's a good way to put it. I want to, I guess I'm interested in going to places that not a lot of people would know to go to, or at least maybe there are places that a lot of people know about, but there's certain elements about it that if you're just scratching the surface, you're not going to find out some really interesting aspect of it. For instance, I went to really, really close to here is the Paramount Ranch.
Yeah.
And I had been going there. I worked really close to this place. It's Paramount Ranch, which is pretty close to Agora Hills, California.
Doesn't exist anymore, unfortunately.
Yeah, well, the western town part of it, for sure. Yeah. But I've been going there for years, and there was this old western town there that they had filmed many, many TV shows and movies and that kind of thing. Westworld was shot there. HBO's Westworld was shot there.
Dr. Quinn, Medicine Woman.
Yes, that's another important one. But I had been going there for years, and it wasn't until maybe a year ago that I I discovered that there was a racetrack there.
Yeah, me too. Within this last year, I discovered it. Yeah, it's crazy.
And, I went there recently and I talked to one of the park rangers and he was telling me the story about where people would set up their cars to go on. So he gave me a really good idea of where, people were working on their cars. People would walk across the street up to the hill to spectate. And, I guess going there, I always thought it was weird that there was these weird, like wide banked trails.
Yeah.
And, just a very long, and they still call that main road down by the park ranger station. They still call that the straightaway.
No kidding.
Even
I didn't
today,
know that.
they call it the straightaway.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So that's just a really, and I learned a little bit about, what they raced there and why they stopped. There were two very bad accidents, fatal crashes that happened. So this is actually part of the track. It loops around and then it goes underneath like a bridge. So it goes underneath the straightaway section. And there were two really bad wrecks there, I believe, in 1956, and they couldn't get insurance after that, so they just shut it down. But you can go there today, even after the fires that were there that took out the western town. You can still very easily make out most sections of the racetrack. And the park ranger was telling me that at least once or twice a year, there's somebody that comes out there and that says they want to reopen the track. Like it's not likely.
Yeah, that's going to be a very expensive racetrack in a very expensive area.
Sure. So yeah, it's things like that where if you just go there, you might have heard about Paramount Ranch, in some tour guide or something like that. You just go and walk around and like, oh, look at the pretty trees. Oh, there's a nice stream that runs through here. And that's what I did for years. Yeah, I just went there and enjoyed the nature and enjoyed the little western town there. But part of what I'm trying to do with my channel is to just dig a little bit deeper and not even that much deeper. All I had to do is talk to a few people, and then I learned a whole lot more about that place than I ever would have just kind of walking around. So
it was such a pleasure sitting down with you. I mean, the first thing that I wanted to do when I saw the car was I wanted to talk to the person that owned it.
Yes.
And I'm really happy that I actually got to sit face to face with you and to hear your background and to hear where you come from.
Yeah, this was a ton of fun.
Thank you. I try to make it fun.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Awesome. So do everyone a favor. Please tell us where we could find Hello Road and your Instagram and everywhere you want people to discover you.
Sure. Yeah. So, the YouTube channel Hello Road is youtube.com/Hello Road, and I try to do a video every 2 weeks, depending on how things go. And we, buying new cars every once in a while and going to new places. So that's kind of the main place you can check me out. Instagram is at Mr. Ethan Tufts, Mr. Ethan Tufts, and I'm also on Twitter at Mr. Ethan Tufts.
Awesome.
Yeah, and we also have we just started recently the Hello Road podcast. Me and my friend Paul talk about kind of all the same stuff we talk about. We same kind of things that I talk about on my YouTube channel.
The Road Stories podcast is recorded and edited by me, Michael Senderovich. If you like the show, please leave me a review wherever you listen. It helps the show greatly. And finally, please follow me on Instagram at Road Stories Mike. Thanks so much for listening.